The podcast you're about to listen to may contain random lines from musical theater, terrible attempts at regional accents, and a sincere discussion about mental health. You have been warned. Are you ready to start singing with your feet? Formidable! Allez, c'est parti! Non, nous ne sommes pas fous, nous ne sommes pas ivres, nous sommes juste dans la joie. Une joie profonde, nos cœurs elle inonde. Cette joie, elle vient du ciel. Non, nous ne sommes pas fous.
Welcome to Sing With Your Feet. My name is Lily Fields, and I'm going to be your fairy godmother for the next half hour or so. Fairy godmother, you say? Well, yes, Cinderella. I am a fairy godmother. I am your fairy godmother, and not just a self-proclaimed fairy godmother either. My talents as fairy godmother are now internationally renowned, a fact which delights my magical little heart. Somehow, this summer, while I was on hiatus, I picked up a whole crop of new Cinderellas in parts of the world that I am unfamiliar with. Because we may not know each other well yet, let me take a second to introduce myself. I am Lily Fields. I'm the mother to two whirling dervishes ages almost 7 and 8 years old. I'm wife to a philosopher prince. I live in the Alsace region of France with a view on the Black Forest of Grimm's fairy tale fame out my back window. Before I began fairy godmothering, I tried my hand at several careers: theme park tour guide, wedding planner, database created goddess, fundraiser for a nonprofit radio station, writer, and, my favorite, musician. And a lot of these simultaneously. The career I currently enjoy is that of philosopher princess, with a side gig as a fairy godmother and aspiring novelist. I have an intransigent eye for detail, something that I was told once by a colleague, which sounds like a nice way of saying that I am a nerdy rule follower. And I was also introduced once as relentless in my perfectionism at a board of directors meeting, and it was not meant as a compliment. Intransigent and perfectionist are unfortunately words that describe me well. So generally, I'm not a laughs-a-minute kind of gal, but there are a few fun things to know about me. I love color, I like pretty things, and I love smart, funny, and thoughtful people, which is why I am tickled that you are here. So that's a little bit about me. Let's talk about you, shall we? Who are you, Cinderella? What makes you tick? What is important to you? What relationships are you in right now, and how are they going? What's stressing you out right now? What's something that you're looking forward to? What is it that you absolutely love doing? What is it that you absolutely dread doing this week? What would the people who know you say about you right now? And what is something about that you're really proud of? Although I might not have caught all of your answers to all of those questions, I'm really proud of you for trying to answer them. Here on this podcast, our mission is to seek out joy, to hold on to joy, to make decisions that reap a harvest of joy. I'm not talking about being happy. Let's be perfectly clear about that. What I want for you is for your soul to vibrate with joy. As a matter of fact, that fabulous theme song you heard at the opening of the show, that's my friend Claude who wrote it, and my friend Matt who sang it. It's called La Joie, which literally means joy. So I go pretty hard about joy because joy is what makes life bearable, not happiness, although happiness is nice. Happiness is temporary. It comes and goes like a storm over Lake Erie. Joy is a headlamp when we've fallen down a well. It's the flashlight when the power goes out. It's the tiny sliver of moonlight to help us find our path in the woods. Joy is water in the desert and a nice stocked reserve of food in a famine. Joy is a gift that you give yourself. And this season on the podcast, we are going to look at ways to pursue joy, and I'm guessing that a lot of those ways are not necessarily things that will make you happy. But if you are willing to hear me out, willing to sing a little bit with your feet, maybe you might find a few new little rays of sunshine in your life too. So, If you're ready, Cinderella, take my hand, a little fairy dust, and c'est parti. Part 1, Surviving Vacation. This summer, my band of merry men and I went home to the good old US of A for our vacation. It was a wonderful trip. I saw so many people I love deeply. Some new friends, some old friends, my family, and no small number of Cinderellas. My scalawags set themselves an intention for our trip, one that honestly took me aback before we left. They agreed that both of them wanted to meet a new friend while we were in the USA. I kind of recoiled at the thought. How can I guarantee that both of them would meet someone that they click with? Knowing my children, who are self-centered little human hurricanes, I couldn't begin to imagine how exactly that was going to work. But ever the mother who wants to take her kids seriously, I went out and I bought a few little gifts that eventually we could give to my little fella's new friends. I love to give gifts. It makes me so happy to give gifts. It's a marker of friendship for me. I projected that weird quirk onto my children, and they glommed onto it. When they would meet a new friend, they would give their new friend a gift. Well, guess what? It happened. Both of my kids made new friends during our trip, and I'll be darned if that didn't fill them both with something deeper than happiness. It filled them with real, honest to goodness, deep, deep down in their hearts, joy. Why did this bring them joy? Because they set an intention, they kept their eyes peeled for opportunities to meet that intention, and they jumped on the occasions as they presented themselves. This setting of intentions is something that I really enjoy. You may remember that in the week after Christmas, I become what I like to call a resolutionary, a person who makes New Year's resolutions. I love to make resolutions. Setting intentions is something like that. Our vacation went, as should come as no surprise to anyone, extremely fast. That's what happens, doesn't it? Time flies, and especially when you're having fun. But setting intentions, not necessarily planning out every detail of the vacation, but rather setting the intention to, I don't know, make new friends, or to catch up with old friends, or to have a new experience, or to go back to a favorite place. The intentions open up a pathway to joy. It can't slow down time, but the satisfaction that comes along with doing what we set out to do, again, not in a super specific way, but in a global way that we suspect will bring us joy, it makes the whole experience more satisfying for longer. Part 2, Why Time Flies. Since we're on the subject, time really does fly, doesn't it? It should also come as no surprise to you that I have a theory on that subject. I call it my theory of proportion to life. Not longer than a week ago, I tried to explain it to someone who does not share my fanciful view on ideas, and she just looked at me with this blank stare, eyes half rolled up into her head. But you are not her, Cinderella. I just know you're going to be on this with me. Okay, so when we're kids, a year seems to go on forever, doesn't it? A school year is something that has no boundaries. It begins and then it just drones on and on and on and on. For that matter, 1 hour to a kid is an eternity. I still get irritated when I think that the conservatory where my kids study music thinks that an 8-year-old kid should be able to sit through 2 hours of music theory on a Thursday evening. I mean, sure, he can, but he's a wreck when he gets home. So, right, anyway, my eldest is 8 years old and in 3rd grade. He has been attending school, as is required here in France, since he was 3. When he started school at 3 years old, a school year was mathematically 1/3 of his life. When that's the case, how is a child supposed to be able to understand how long a year is? It seems like an eternity because it is a huge proportion of his life. This year, when the school year ended, my eldest said to me, "This year went by so much faster than last year." And although it is not technically true that the minutes passed faster, it is true that one school year went from being 14% of his life the year before to being 12.5% of his life this year. That 1.5% difference made a real, tangible difference to him. So now, compare that with me, your fairy godmother, who at the end of the month of September will be blowing out 46 candles on her birthday cake. 1 year is a whopping 2.174% of my life. Is it no wonder that our perception of time is so vastly different as adults as it was when we were kids? The question is, and the question that has been driving me absolutely crazy for the last few months is, can I slow down time? Again, not actually slow down time. My superpowers don't include the ability to do that, at least not yet. I want to suggest humbly that we have the power, when we are really determined to do it, to fully invest our attention and energy and intentions into savoring moments of joy. One day, when we had returned home to France after our vacation, my husband took our dervishes to the skate park for the morning. I spent the morning alone at home, adrift in activities that make me feel alive. I sewed, I wrote, I planned, I daydreamed. I was awash in a kind of flood of joy and peace, and I'll admit it, happiness. It was a hot day, but heat doesn't really bother me all that much. I'd left the windows open because you know that in France we don't have air conditioners, right? And in the instant my husband and boys came home, they started whining about how hot it was and how I should have closed the shutters and the curtains out of respect for them. I was in such a zone, so peaceful and so filled with joy, that I shut them all down and began singing a little made-up song about how this was a place of peace and happiness, peace and happiness, peace and happiness. Yes, this is a place of peace and happiness, so please don't ruin my mood. We have the power, nay, the responsibility for our own joy, our own peace, our own happiness. We need to protect that joy with every fiber of our beings. So part 3, enthusiasm kills. So what is it that kills our joy, and how is it that we end up being the vector by which our joy vanishes? Well, I have a few ideas. Are you surprised? But first, I have to tell you a few stories. When I worked at a little non-profit radio station here in France, I hosted a segment that was called The Compliment of the Day, Le Compliment du Jour. On the air, I would tell my colleague Jonathan, who is someone with whom I often can find a lot of joy, almost an equal amount to how much he drives me up the wall, but I digress. I would tell Jonathan a story from my real life about a situation and would end the story with a compliment that would be appropriate to use in that situation. Kind of a random acts of kindness thing, only it was with words. What's the best compliment you've ever received, Cinderella? Think about it. You don't have to tell me, because I know from personal experience that sometimes the most meaningful compliments are the ones we never sought out, but speak to us in our place of deepest need or deepest want. And those things are profoundly intimate. We treasure them in the secret places of our hearts, and sometimes they flit to our thoughts at peculiar moments and give us warm little flashes of light in our hearts. Every few years or so, the group I sing with does a team-building activity in which we anonymously write down something we love about everyone else in the group. Now, granted, these are people who've been making music together for a long time, so we know one another pretty well. Sometimes we write a compliment about their musical skills. Sometimes we write about how punctual someone is. Sometimes I will tell Francois that I love the way the tea in his travel mug smells. It's really hard to stay anonymous on that one, given that I am the only odor fetishist that I know. It sounds cheesy, but it really is a wonderful activity. When done anonymously, it allows us to be as sincere or as silly as we want to be. As a matter of fact, I still carry around with me in my wallet a few of the post-it notes that were written to my attention. Just for fun, take a second and think about the way that the people around you might talk about you. Think about the people in your entourage and what you might say about them. The tenor of the relationship will allow you to be more or less sincere, more or less funny, more or less honest. I mean, I could tell Jonathan how I love the way his feet smell, and he will know that it's a wink and a nod to the years we worked together and shared a very tiny office space. I could tell my sister Poppy I love how she is willing to take on the hard and scary things like a badass. I've also written that I admire someone's willingness to step out of their comfort zone musically, which is an admittedly less intimate compliment, but it is nonetheless true. The post-its I receive usually include a reference to my perkiness, my bubbliness, my effervescence, I have on numerous occasions received a note that says something like, "You are mon petit rayon de soleil, my little ray of sunshine." One of those is still in my wallet because it came from a person, anonymity has its limits, because I recognized his handwriting, who I admire tremendously. To know that that person, who is not typically warm and fuzzy, felt that way about me, well, it was one of those perspective-altering moments in my life. So, being the nostalgic fairy godmother that I am, I keep that note where I can always find it when I am doubting that there's anything good about me. Once only in my life have I ever received a piece of feedback that was not on that spectrum, and it was from an internet stranger, my old friend Bandra Bukowski, with whom I share a mutual admiration for ideas and poetry. He once said, "Lily Fields has pretty epic ideas." I screenshotted that, and I look at it at least once a week. We all need to be reminded of how amazing we are. I'm trying to remember why I started talking about this. I'm digressing. Right, we were talking about savoring. Do you remember our extended discussion in our first and second seasons of the podcast about the ideal life exercise and the 19 different themes that make up our experience of the ideal life? We talked about spiritual life, parenting, sexuality, having a clean home, and one weird little one that's called gravitas. Now listen, I have no illusions that anyone will ever go around accusing me of having gravitas. But what I do know is that a little bit of gravitas will go a long way in learning how to savor and thereby slow down time. Gravitas is an intangible character trait. Back in episode 22, which was simply entitled Gravitas, I defined it as a function of both verbal and nonverbal communication. It is seriousness, dignity, composure, credibility, authenticity, all wrapped up in a self-aware, confident package. As time has passed, I have added the entire list of 100 and some odd virtues that we've talked about in season 2, and also the ideas of intentionality, deliberateness, and slowness. Are there any of those words that might describe you? Seriousness, dignity, composure, credibility, authenticity, self-awareness, confidence, intentionality, deliberateness, slowness? It never hurts to take stock. I don't know, like every 3 weeks or so when you do your ideal life exercise on the theme of gravitas. You don't know what I'm talking about? I'll include a few links in the show notes to get you back up to speed. So how are gravitas and savoring the present moment compatible? Well, first, let's look at the contrary. Savoring and enthusiasm are not compatible. Perkiness, bubbliness, being a little ray of sunshine? Same. They are not mutually exclusive, certainly, but when it comes to learning how to savor and appreciate life and really dig in and enjoy a moment, bubbliness distracts, enthusiasm suffocates, and perkiness kills. Part 4. The Golden Rule and People-Pleasing. We are going to talk more about people-pleasing in episode 67 in 2 weeks, but I want to mention it here for a second. As you may remember, this year, the year of our Lord 2023, I made a New Year's resolution to live out the Golden Rule. That is, to spend a year doing for others what I would want done for me. I've gone through all kinds of shades of understanding about what that means. At first, I'll admit that I had a naive kind of idea that the Golden Rule would be a way to control other people. Like, if I do something for someone else, then they will have to do the same for me. I told you it was naive. But it's obviously not that simple. The Golden Rule is an investment in satisfaction of our own life. It is to search our own souls deeply to know what we want and what we need, and to seek to provide that satisfaction for someone else. There is a multiplication effect when we do this, even if we don't immediately see it. What we want and what we need is not as simple as, for example, what my newly minted 8-year-old seems to think it is. Like inviting someone to my birthday party does not mean that I will get a really cool birthday gift. Living according to the Golden Rule has taught me to accept the kindness of others without feeling guilty, or feeling like I'm taking without giving in return. Believe me, I know that this is a really big deal for someone like me who is a lifelong people pleaser. It also means that I'm more willing to accept the extravagance of others, and I do no longer doubt that I am worthy of their generosity. Why is this? I can't exactly explain it all, but it's partly because I am, by nature, extravagant with tokens of affection. I would never question the worthiness of another person to receive my extravagance, so by being extravagant with others, I can, by some miracle, accept that others might want to be extravagant with me. And somehow, in all of this, I have understood that in order to truly please others, I have to start by pleasing myself. Do for others what you would want done for you. The difference is perhaps not visible to the naked eye, but the intention is completely opposite. Pleasing myself, owning the fact that I am a worthy human being who has needs and wants that deserve to be honored, makes me better able to love others. It makes me more sensitive to what others might actually want or need. And honestly, it makes me more enthusiastic about giving others what they need. It is impossible to savor life and be a people pleaser. A people pleaser's attention is always looking around to be that little ray of sunshine for someone else. A people pleaser doesn't know how to quiet her soul to ponder her own heart's desire. And that is exactly what it means to savor. It is to slow down, to quiet our soul, and see how this exact moment fills up some need or want of our own heart, and how in that moment we can find joy.
Elle me fait bondir et vibrer, crier. Elle me donne envie de chanter, danser. Elle pousse à agir, donner, partager. Et tout simplement de sourire, aimer.
So back to the question at hand. Why are savoring and gravitas compatible? Gravitas, as a character trait, is about being grounded, serious, weighty, thoughtful, deliberate, dignified, and slow. Someone with gravitas carries wisdom as a sidearm and knows how to use it to stop the ever-increasingly speedy flow of time. Gravitas tells us to slow down, to be quiet, to be thoughtful, invest in this present moment deliberately. And that, my dear Cinderella, is the art of savoring. Part 5, asking for what we need. Something I've begun doing, which has become a natural outgrowth of my year of living out the Golden Rule, has been to start articulating what I need. A people pleaser does not do this, now does she? A people pleaser never asks for anything for herself. She doesn't know how. She's embarrassed to have needs or wants, or even to admit that she might not have something that she wants. This can lead to, at least in my case, a serious case of shame. Shame for not being satisfied with what I already have, shame about the things that I like, shame that I am not perfect and that I have wants or needs at all. But here's the deal, and here's how the Golden Rule has helped me in this. Just imagine for a moment. You're at breakfast and you've taken a bite of muffin that is just a little bit too dry. Your coffee cup is empty and you have this lump of muffin stuck in your throat. Your partner is there at the table with you, maybe reading the paper, not really paying attention to you at all. You are a people pleaser, so your first instinct is to not disturb your partner. Let him keep reading the paper, right? You're on the verge of suffocating, though, so it would be really nice for someone who can get to the sink quicker than you can if that person would help you out. This happened to me yesterday, and you know what I did? I tapped my indulgent husband's hand and I whispered, "Water, please." He looked at me oddly for a second, and then you know what he did? He got up and fetched me a glass of water, which I took, and I drank like my life depended on it. Could I have gotten up and stormed across the apartment to take care of myself? Sure. But you know what? Taking care of me made my husband feel good. It made me feel good to see that he cared. The end result would have been the same. Namely, I would have had a glass of water. But me asking him for help made us both feel good. Believe me when I say I savored that glass of water like I have rarely savored a glass of water. The reality is that when we actually get what we have asked for, we are more inclined to savor it. There is a kind of exponential pleasure factor attached to the realization of something that we have articulated as a need. And this is true in big ways and in small ways. A glass of water can be savored in the same way that an intensely personal moment of intimacy can be savored. When we ask for what we want and we get it, there will be pleasure. And as worthy, dignified human beings, it is well within our rights to enjoy having our needs met. We'll talk more about this in a few weeks when we start talking about anticipation and just how powerful a force it is. But for now, I want us to hold on to two thoughts about the art of savoring. Setting intentions for the time immediately ahead of us and slowing down to appreciate what we have. Those are two powerful ways to savor life. On this side of summer vacation, I don't feel many regrets. I don't really feel any regrets except for one, I think. I didn't return home feeling like I needed the proverbial vacation after my vacation, if you know what I mean. Yes, it was taxing and it was exhausting, but it was also wonderful and full of moments of joy and of love and of sweetness and of happiness. Moments that would have been there, whether I had stopped to enjoy them or not. The pleasure that I took, staring up like a country bumpkin at the Hancock Tower in Chicago, I still feel it. I feel it in my neck. I feel it in my heart. I feel it in my knees. The pleasure that I enjoyed on the beach in Michigan City making a sandcastle with my boys, I still feel it. And not just because I got terribly sunburned that day. I can still smell the sunshine on my boy's skin and feel the sand between my toes. The pleasure that I took at the Japanese steakhouse with my dad, aka Popeye, and his wife Daisy, yep, I still feel the awe of the flames on the grill, and I can almost, if I try really hard, remember how delicious those zucchini were. During every individual encounter, I tried my darndest to slow down, to savor, and to use all of my senses to create memories. And for once in my life, I feel like I pulled a Superman and I flew backwards around the earth to turn back time. And I can do it whenever I want to, because those memories of joy are intertwined with my senses, locked up deep in my brainstem in that primitive part where my emotions live. Admittedly, it's way easier to do that on vacation than it is to do at home. The novelty of the whole thing lends itself to savoring, but I'm setting an intention for the remainder of this year. I want to savor the everyday moments better, and I want you to join me on this journey. You deserve joy, Cinderella. You deserve to be loved exactly as you need to be loved, and you deserve to be respected, and if no one has told you this lately, let me remind you that you are spectacular. You are worthy, and you make this world a better place. Here's the catch, darling. You deserve all these things, but you will never be able to receive them from others if you don't start loving the living daylights out of yourself. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I'm looking forward to meeting up with you again next week to continue our adventure together. I want to give a great big thank you to Seven Productions here in Mulhouse, France for the use of the song La Joie as the intro and outro to the show, to Matt Kugler who sang it, and to Claude Equet who wrote it. This is your fairy godmother signing off. Just remember, it is never too late to start singing with your feet.